5.3 is about rates. The key idea is rate and unit rate, and we'll talk about equivalent rates in just a second. But our rate is a ratio of two quantities using different units. So in other words, we could compare miles to hours would be an example of what I'm saying, or miles to seconds, or there's a whole bunch of different ideas behind. But just know that units, they're different units, so that's what a rate is. And a unit rate compares a quantity to one unit of another quantity. And the last term is equivalent rates. So an equivalent rate, two equivalent rates have the same unit rate. So when we get talking about unit rates, that's how we can tell that they're equivalent. Let's do a quick example. So you pay $27 for 3 pizzas. We're going to figure out what our rate would be, and we're going to figure out what our unit rate would be. So let's start with our rate. Well, our rate would look like this. And remember, a rate is a ratio of two quantities using different units. So we have $27 for our pizzas to 3 pizzas. And that would be what this is right here. So we've got our 3 pizzas. It's $27 to 3 pizzas. What are our two different rates that we're using? Well, we've got money, we've got pizzas. So those are two different rates that we're talking about. Our unit rate would be $9 to every 1 pizza. And remember in section 5.1, it's really important to know the language of ratios to understand this. Well, how did I get from 27 to 3 to 9 to 1? Well, it's an equivalent ratio if you think about it. And the algebra behind it is, for my rate, it would look like this. A units to B units. My unit rate, to figure that out, all I did was went like this. A units divided by B units. And that's going to equal 1 unit. So what I did was I divided 27 divided by 3 to get 9. So it's telling me it's $9 per 1 unit. That's what it's explaining to me. So we'll do that in more depth in a minute. So this is a double number line, and we're talking about two different units. So we're talking about points, and we're talking about notes. So the word problem reads like this for example 1. The double number line shows the rate at which you earn points for successfully hitting notes in a music video game. Write a rate that represents this situation. So they give you this. This is actually one of the more simple problems that you'll do. So they give you a whole bunch of different rates at what you're hitting these notes in this video game. So in other words, let me get my pointer out. For every 150 points, I hit 1 note. So for every 2 notes I hit, I get 300 points. And for every 450 points, I'm at 3 notes. So that's basically the language behind it. All I'm saying is what a ratio would be. So the directions here would say, write a rate that represents the situation. It's considered a rate because a rate, again, represents a ratio of two quantities using different units. We're talking about different units. We're talking about notes and points. So if you see something like this on a test, and it says on the test, write a rate that represents a situation, you just choose one. So I might write 450 points to 3 notes. Okay? And that's just one possibility. And then you would circle your answer. You could have done 600 points to 4 notes, or 750 points to 5 notes. This really is super simple to realize. If they're giving you a double number line like this, you're just recognizing that these are rates. Example 2 is finding a unit rate. So as I said before, when you divide your rates, you'll end up with a unit. So I'll show you how this works. So our example looks like this. It says a piece of space junk travels 5 miles in 8 seconds. How far does it travel per second? So I went from, I've got to recognize that I've got 5 miles in 8 seconds. And this is my space junk. You might be like, what is space junk? Well, you can look it up because I'm not explaining it right now. I don't even know why they use this as an example, but they do, so we're going to go with it. So we're going to use a ratio table and divide by 8 to write the equivalent rate in which the time is 1 second. So we start with miles, okay, and then we talk about our time, which is in seconds. So we're creating a ratio table. We know our ratio or our rate is 5 to 8. And we could make equivalent ratios if we wanted to, or equivalent rates, I should say. If I want to get, because it says how far does it travel per second? Well, that's where my indicator is of where I need to focus. I need to focus on my seconds. I have to get my seconds to 1. Because if you think about it, that's what I'm trying to find. How far does it travel per second? This is the information I'm looking for. So here is where unknown lays. So how do I get from 8 to 1? That's the question I'm going to ask myself. Well, 8 divided by 8 gives me 1. Remember what we've talked about. Anything that we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So I have to divide the top by 8. We've learned that we can make fractions out of it, right? So we can say 5 divided by 8 is 5/8. So how would I write this to be completely done with it? You would say the rate 5 miles to 8 seconds is equivalent to 5/8 mile to 1 second. So the space junk would travel 5/8 mile per second. And that would be my final answer for this problem, which is incredibly fast for space junk to be traveling. I wouldn't want to be in its way. So our answer is 5/8 mile per second. All we had to do is put in our unit rate. How did we get there? We ask ourselves that question. Then we should be able to solve this portion. Alright, here's your try it. So these ones might be a little tough. Go back to example 2 and figure out how to do this. But you have number 1, it says a Japanese bullet train travels 558 miles in 3 hours. How far does it travel every hour? So please recognize that your every hour is they want to know how many miles does it travel in 1 hour. So that's your unit. Number 2 says $28 saved in 4 weeks. Well, I want to know, my question is, if it's writing a unit rate, how much money would I save in 1 week? What is my unit rate for that? And the answers will be on the next page. Alright, and here are my answers. Number 1 was 186 miles. And for number 2, it was $7 per week.